Good. Let's get into this. So here's basically the deal. Donald Trump, and becoming president again, made a big, beautiful promise. And many of those big, beautiful promises are in the big, beautiful bill. However, they don't exactly match the magnitude of the original promise that he made. Now, some people will say this is heresy. How dare he? It's absolutely terrible. How could he? I don't disagree with them. But the other side of the coin is like when Biden was coming in, he had an amazing plan when it comes to Social Security, taking care of people, training people to become the caretakers of their own parents, so that we'd have like a caretaker generation for the elderly. And then basically a lot of that stuff just didn't happen. It just never even made it to like second round discussions in any format. And it just sucked. It just really, like I would see like the outskirts and like nonprofits talking about it and this and that, but it was never like in Congress. It was never in the House, in the Senate being considered. Now, with Trump, Trump has basically a tricky situation. He essentially took his greatest funding partner, which is, of course, Elon Musk, and is going to be taking away a massive amount of money that the United States has been paying to him because, of course, electric cars aren't really that new, and we used money as a form of punishment for those who were not going to make electric cars. I don't know if you guys know how that works. It's like a token system, and if you didn't make enough electric cars, you had to pay the other companies that were making electric cars. So it was like a slap to the original car makers to, allow the new car makers to flourish. With that said, Elon is not happy. And as you saw, Elon is, putting some smackdown on the Twitters with the little birdie birds and the X's. And, it's a pretty X-oriented bird, let me tell you. So with that said, we're going to be focusing on the Social Security aspect of the big, beautiful bill, what he promised, what he's realistically going to get through. And then there's a little problem because the version the Senate has is not the version that the House has. Now, I didn't think this thing was going to pass. I really didn't think this thing was going to pass. I was like, it's not going to pass. I don't really need to do a bunch of videos on it. It's just not going to pass. I think it's going to pass now. I think it's real close to passing. Let's get through it real quick. CNBC. Also, please remember to like. Please remember to subscribe. It's super important for other people to go ahead and know what's going on. Big, beautiful Senate bill touts tax help for seniors on Social Security, how it would work. All right, so some Americans ages 65 and over may be poised to see additional tax relief if Republicans' big, beautiful bill becomes law. In other words, the elderly, the retired, are going to get some tax relief, but it is for a specific group of retired known as retired or making money. As you know, there are quite a few retired that ain't making money. So, it's only going to help some retired people. But remember, the promise was not to tax retirement benefits. That's a big promise. I mean, look, that's a big promise. If you want to get retired people on your side and they're not earning money, but they think maybe one day they might earn money, you know what I mean? It's not a bad sell. It's not a bad sell. All right, let's keep rocking and rolling. As you know, I just woke up not too long ago. My alarms failed, so my apologies. I am checking on all the employees in the firm. I have a little thing showing me all the things that they're saying, so I'm watching them. All right, now, with that said, all right, so some Americans age 65 and over may be poised to see additional tax relief. Now that the Senate and House have both passed their versions of the tax and spending bill, it is up to both chambers to decide how large that new temporary deduction, called a senior bonus in the legislative text, will be. Like I said, they didn't pass the same thing. They're squabbling over what they're going to write into the bill. Per the Senate bill, the deduction would amount to up to $6,000 per eligible taxpayer, while the House's One Big Beautiful Bill Act calls for $4,000 per eligible individual. You've got per eligible taxpayer and then per eligible individual. That's some different wording there. You got $6,000 versus $4,000. I'd rather see the $6,000 for our retired because, as you know, the past 4 years, I'm not trying to take a dig at Biden here, but the past 4 years, from a commercialized, make moneyized, worth of the American dollarized, outset, if you look at it from like a general overview, the rainbow picture, the last 4 years for the American dollar were worse than the past 13 years, including 3 prior presidents. Well, no, technically it would be 2 prior presidents because, Obama. Well, no, actually, sorry, 13. So you'd have Trump, Obama, and then 1 year of the other president. So you'd have 3 presidents, just only a little bit of one. So, in other words, Biden's post-COVID recovery was not a soft landing. It's like, imagine a volcano erupting on top of a plane. You know what I mean? And then the plane was buried for 1,000 years. That's kind of where we're at with how good of a job he did with running the economic aspect of this country. Not good, not good at all. All right. The new additional temporary deduction would be in effect from 2025 through 2028, according to the proposals. So, just to clarify, this is not a forever proposal. This is going to be forever, yada yada yada. It's 2025 to 2028. It's not even the grand length of essentially, the full potential breadth of President Trump's effect. So, it's kind of interesting. They're going to give it to you, but they're not going to give it to you. You're only going to get it for a short limited time. All right, eligible taxpayers would get the full deduction if their modified adjusted gross income is up to $75,000 if single, or $150,000 if married and filing taxes jointly. So, in other words, people earning a lot of money, they're not going to get the benefit of this. People earning less money, 75,000 single, 150,000 married or filing jointly, you know what I mean? They will get the benefit of it. Okay. For incomes above those thresholds, the deductions would phase out at a 6% rate based on the Senate bill and a 4% rate based on the House bill. So, in other words, people above the 75K and 150K, it phases out a 6% rate, Senate 4% rate, House. So they get a little bit, but the bottom line is like, the rich still got to pay more. And that's how our system works. Like, a lot of people are like, the rich don't pay anything. The rich just don't have a lot of income. The rich are smart about it because income is the highest amount to be taxed. The rich have constantly put their stuff into assets and they take on lots of debt, and that way they don't pay a lot of taxes, so that the more time they spend on earth, they pay for less of everybody else. It's the middle class that carries the rich and carries the poor. And when you look at the statistics and math of it, to be fair, it's just one of those gigs where, unfortunately, the lower class, the poverty class, they get the most benefit. A lot of you will say, "I'm super poor. What the hell?" But the amount you paid in over your life is very small, and so as a result, they have to use these bend points to massively push what you get. So it's a tricky situation, and some people haven't paid in enough at all, and they go on SSI, and that's why we have SSI. So, bottom line is this: that's how that works. All right, let's keep rocking and rolling here. So here we go. It would be available to taxpayers regardless of whether they claim the standard deduction or itemize their returns. So very easy peasy to be able to get access to it. Based on both bills, the deduction would fully phase out for single filers with $175,000 in income and joint filers with $250,000, according to the Tax Foundation. Notably, while the White House says the legislative package slashes taxes on Social Security, it does not end the taxation of Social Security benefits. That's the kicker here. You are not going to get what he promised. You're going to get a slimmed down, limited time version of that. So, it's one of those gigs where it is what it is. So, with that said, President Donald Trump touted plans to end the taxation of Social Security benefits on the campaign trail. It has created this, situation where people have an expectation that he's going to go ahead and fix this. He's not. It's not going to pass through the Senate or the House. Republicans are pursuing their tax bill through reconciliation, and a Senate rule prohibits changes to Social Security in that process, so it may not even go through. The two proposed changes, the senior bonus versus eliminating taxes on Social Security benefits, would have different effects based on beneficiaries' incomes, and Social Security benefits are taxed based on a unique formula known as combined income. The sum of the adjusted gross income, non-taxable interest income, and half of the Social Security benefits. Now, a lot of you guys know, you normally get taxed $25,000 plus. You get the 50% tax of your retirement benefits. 34,000 combined income or joint filers with between 32,000 and 44,000. You get hit with the up to 85% of benefits being taxed from your retirement benefits. These are put in 1983. It's not good. It's not preferential. It's problematic. In contrast to the senior bonus in the big, beautiful legislative bill, it targets taxpayers with modified adjusted gross income below $75,000 if they are single and $150,000 if married. So, quoting right here, Brookings Tax Policy Center, they said it's better because it helps the people who need the help the most, meaning the rich basically have to pay more, the middle class don't have to pay as much. So it's biasing it. It's giving more the middle class kind of a beneficial option. But again, the middle class just gets screwed over all the way across because they pay the most taxes because their whole percentage of interest of who they are is mostly earned income. Lower middle to middle income taxpayers would benefit the most from the additional senior deduction, according to the Tax Foundation. But again, it only lasts till 2028. Taxes on Social Security benefits started with legislation enacted in 1983 because the program was falling apart. It's what in the 1983, they were facing basically what we face now in essentially, it'll be probably around 2030. I would say, well, no, I mean, a lot of different things are coming out now, but we're 2025. They're saying like 8 or 9-ish years. So we're looking at like 2033, 2032, somewhere around there is when we will be in the same situation or similar to what we had in 1983. And you'll be seeing a lot of weird laws coming out then that just are not preferential to people. And look, you want my honest opinion about all of this stuff, where we're going with this, where everything is going, we are becoming a situation where government run Social Security benefits doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work. It doesn't work because they haven't effectively used the power of Pelosi to get unreasonable gains from investments. They've gotten really shitty returns from what you've paid in your whole life. And that, as a generational snaking down the line, the butterfly effect, has screwed over generation after generation after generation. I mean, there's a portion of what you pay in that they just borrow, put into a bond, and spend on what they want to spend on for the most part. So a lot of people are pissed, and they should be. But where we're moving with this is Social Security is transitioning into a need for something else. It will likely be a privatized system ultimately, where you get to use your benefits with some group when it comes to investments. And if you fail with your investments, you go on to SSI. If you succeed with your investments, you utilize your SSDI or retirement. So that's kind of where this whole thing is probably going to end up. It's probably not going to be able to continue to survive as a government run program because the government has really destroyed the value of the dollar, destroyed male-female relationships because, they're not having kids like they used to. And just to be clear, the strength of the dollar and fertility rates being high, those are crucial. If you don't have, good marriages where they're like raising, happy, healthy kids that are achieving the most they can become to get the best jobs they can, to make the most money that they can, to do the smartest things that they can, you end up with an entire generation of a percentage of kids that never do anything, never become anything, never do anything. So as a result of that, that's the situation we're in. That's the problem we're in. We're facing them trying to glue together what's left of retirement, knowing that a pending collapse is coming. And I just want to point out one last thing, because a lot of people they say, "Oh, well, this is scary, da 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 da," so on and so forth. If you feel scared by Social Security retirement ultimately failing by a significant reduction in 8 to 9 years from now, let me just kind of like give you something that is scarier, but also calms me. And I know that this might make you a little worried, but it calms me. So a lot of you feel like these politicians should be fixing Social Security in a much bigger way. But you'll notice that they're not, because they know that they can't and also do the things they want to do. If you understand that, if you just say it a couple of times and realize that they're not going to fix it because they can't, because they don't want to, it's a much more calming effect, because you give up on the hope that the messiah of future politicians will fix Social Security. You give up on it and you just start to focus on, how do I make this work in other ways? For some reason, that's calming to me. It might not be calming to you, but for some reasons, it's calming to me. I think it's worse for disabled people than retired people because they're, unable to work. That's the whole point of the program they're on it. Whereas retired people can usually do some work. But, hence the whole how much you earn, how much you get back kind of gig with this whole bill. I just want you to kind of focus on that. because that's where I've evolved over the years. Because, look, we've been talking about how a politician could fix this for decades. They've known since 1983. Come on. So, anyways, I will catch you a little bit later. You have a wonderful, wonderful day. We will rock and roll from there. And I will see you at the next video shortly. Attorney Walter Hnot, the most viewed, subscribed to, and clicked on Disability Attorney. Please head over to Google, type in Disability Resolution Law Firm. Again, Disability Resolution Law Firm, and throw up some stars if you want. Also, I'm partnered with Chapter Medicare. I don't do Medicare stuff. So if you have Medicare questions, just call them. That's their gig. If you want to figure out, there's that $15 billion fraud situation that they're studying and watching right now. If you want to make sure your Medicare is okay, you want to check on your plan, give them a call. Because literally, I don't know if you know this, but yesterday, the arrests were occurring. They arrested over 320 something people in the Medicare system. They just arrested a bunch of social workers in the Medicaid system. Also, please remember, I go live on Mondays and Thursdays. I fell asleep on Monday and Tuesday, so Wednesday we'll be going live, and I will catch you guys a little bit later. And also remember, big 1-hour consultations in the bio below. I'll catch you a little bit later, and we'll rock and roll from there. Thanks so much, Attorney Walter Hnot, and I'll catch you at the other video shortly. Bye-bye.